Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Katelyn and I like to film eyeshadow palette ranking and review videos, as well as the occasional other content sprinkled in. So if you like indie makeup, if you like eyeshadow palettes, if you like me in general, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post 2 videos every single week. And for those of you that are not new here, my face is happy that you are seeing it again. And just to get things out of the way, this is a wig from Cozy Zone. I believe it's called Ombre Radiance. As of today that I am filming this, it's out of stock on their site, but I do have an affiliate link with Cozy Zone. Oh my gosh, there's hair in my face. I do have an affiliate link with Cozy Zone that I will try to remember to link down below just in case you want to check out any wigs from them. They definitely have a lot of affordable synthetic wigs, and I really like them a lot, especially the ones that have these like curtain bangs. I feel like it helps them blend while still looking trendy. Anywho, as you can see from the title, we are ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes that I used in the month of September. And if you're new to my channel, the palettes that I rank every single palette. So if it's new, if it's old, doesn't matter. If I used it in the month of September, we are talking about it today. So all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get on into it. I do ask that if at any point in this video you find yourself enjoying yourself, please give it a thumbs up. And yeah, let's start out with my first category. So I like to do my rankings in a very specific way. I split the categories into 4 different categories. That is because I, one, can never keep track of what number we're on. And I hate having to like edit that out, and it's just a nightmare. So anyways, I'm not even gonna bother trying to keep track of what number we're on. So we're gonna talk about them in categories for that reason, and also because I feel like within the categories, any given day, the order can switch up. So I feel like the category is more accurate of like my feelings on the palette, but I do put them in a least liked to most liked order. And I am gonna tuck my hair, and I know some people hate like wig hair being tucked, but that's what we're doing. And if my lashes are lifting in the corner, I'm sorry, they've been on for a while. So let's get into Category 1. So category 1 I've described before as like palettes I feel kind of meh about. Like if they disappeared from my collection, I probably wouldn't be that upset about it. So I kind of treat it now as like palettes I would feel okay decluttering, just so to help. There was one video one time where I was hangry and I put a lot of palettes in that category. And so now I'm trying to like tell myself in my brain, like, is this a palette you would feel comfortable decluttering? If so, it goes in this category. So anywho, the palette, we have one palette in this category today. It is the Flora palette from Ace Beauté. And if you watched my last ranking video, you know that technically I have decluttered this palette from my collection. It just hasn't left my house yet. So I still have it to show, which is handy. But this will be the last time that I'm featuring it. But hopefully, unless I decide to undeclutter it, I really like the quality of this. I think the shimmer shades in this palette are really nice, especially the shimmer shade right here. My issue with it is that I didn't find myself reaching for it. And so for me, I have so much eyeshadow that I want to use and play with. I don't like keeping my collection full of things that I just don't find that I'm gonna ever reach for or want to reach for. And so that's kind of, I felt like this was kind of cluttering things up in my brain. So I just needed to pull it out of my collection. I also feel like this color story is like not quite a me color story. That's why I wasn't really reaching for it. It just wasn't my favorite, but I do think the quality is really nice. The shimmers are stunning, especially that yellow green. That's actually what the shade I used. I put this palette with a couple of other palettes this month, and that was the shade I used. So anyways, that is the one palette that I feel meh about. The next category has palettes that I feel like I like the palettes. They're okay. Like there's nothing wrong with them. I shouldn't say that. Sometimes there's stuff wrong with them, but like they're okay. If somebody said, should I get this, should I not? I'd give them like a rundown of like the pros and cons, and then I'd be like, you might like it or you might be happy with it. There's nothing that makes me feel like I want to get rid of them. So there's obviously something about them that I like, but they're just okay. Don't know if that makes a lot of sense. So first up is the Milk Cosmetics and the Beetlejuice collab. One of the collabs, they did 2 palettes, but this is the Waiting Room palette. And this is what the inside of the palette looks like. I love the mattes in this palette. The shimmers, some of the shimmers I like the shade Juno. The like reddy shimmers are not my favorite, but red eyeshadow is not my favorite That's probably why this palette is in this category. I feel like these two mattes and these two mattes are pretty similar to each other, so I wish there was like slightly more variety in this color story. But overall, I do enjoy this palette. I love the theming of it. I'm a huge Beetlejuice fan, so that's why I would never declutter this, but it's not my favorite palette in the world. Next up, we have the Gloss Gods Color of Rain palette. And this is an almost all shimmer palette. There is one matte down here, a matte black, but this is what the palette looks like. The shimmers are gorgeous, super creamy, super shifty, smooth. Like, they're a stunning shimmer formula. The black matte is a really nice formula as well. My issue is that these shimmers, they are so shifty that they start to look similar on the eye. Like, I've done a ton of looks with this palette, and like these three and that shimmer in particular, like, they just start to kind of appear similar because they're all shifting blue and purple, and even though there's slightly different blues and purples, it just starts to look the same. So I just don't think I'm getting a ton of variety in that palette, and I don't think I needed a whole palette of like that color scheme. But the quality is really nice. So that's why I don't see myself ready to declutter it quite yet, because I do really enjoy the quality of it, but it's just not my favorite color story. Next up, we have the Nomad Cosmetics Paradise Islands palette. I brought this palette with me to Hawaii, and it was perfect for that. This is the inside of the palette in case you've never seen it. It is definitely like a pastel mid-tone, like colorful color story. I feel like it gives very spring, summer vibes for sure. I like this palette. I do feel like I don't know what it is about this palette in particular. I just don't find myself reaching for it all that often. And I don't know. I don't love the looks I come up with when I do it. But like when I look at the palette, I'm like, oh, so pretty. You know, like there's something really gorgeous about this color story, but every time I use it, I'm just like, it's okay. Like I don't know how to explain that into words, but I feel like if you use a lot of makeup and have a lot of makeup, you kind of get what I'm saying. Like there's a palette that like looks perfect, but then never creates like a perfect look. And it's like, I don't know if there's like just a chemistry issue between me and the palette, but anyways. Next up, we have the Delicious Delights palette from Cosmic Brushes. I talked about this palette recently over on my TikTok, just saying that this palette had like, it was about to be into the declutter pile. Let's just put it that way, because I was like, I have used it a couple times, never had any desire to reach for it again. You have one dark shade in the whole palette. It's this purple shade, which if you can tell, busted everywhere in my palette. I was able to kind of repress it, but still, like if you want to do this green, like you can only go so deep unless you want to throw that purple in there. So I was just like, what am I doing with this? You know? Because I like more contrast. Like I like to go from really dark to really light in a palette, and I just feel like, yeah, that gets dark, but like just the one shade. Anyways, the color story just was throwing me off. So on my TikTok, I did another look with this palette. I did pair it with the Adept Cosmetics Cimmerian Sunset palette. Spoiler, that palette will be coming soon in this ranking. But I did a look with it, loved that look. And so it helped me to pull this palette. It now has 1 foot out of the declutter pile. So it's in this category because I really enjoyed it. And I felt like the shimmer Appear sprinkles looked really, really pretty. So I kind of feel re-inspired to play with it and maybe just mix it with palettes where I have darker matte. So I don't quite feel ready to get rid of this yet. And the quality of this one's really nice. So that's where I put it where it was. But like I said, any given day in this category, these all could shift around. But that's where we're at today. I'm feeling happy with that one today. So let's move on to the next category. And I will mention whenever we get to a palette that I just got for the month, I like to point out like which palettes were new, because I think it's helpful to see where the new palettes stack up against the old palettes. So that's why I like to do the ranking this way anyways. But this palette, or this category that we're about to talk about, are palettes that I really like. Like I really, really like them. I would recommend them to people. I think they're great. They're just not holy grail favorites. Like if I had to really curate my collection down, these would be tough choices, but absolutely like still really like them and possibly even love them. But they're just, like I said, not holy grail favorites. So first up, let me just say that you're going to see some palettes from the Unearthly Cosmetics Summer Mystery Boxes. They're still selling those, so I just wanted to give the disclaimer if you haven't seen them yet and you want to purchase one of those and you want to be surprised, skip ahead. But you're about to see this palette, like you're about to see 2 of them, not back to back. There's a palette in between. But anyways, you might want to click out of here or like skip ahead like 5 minutes and you should be safe. Hopefully. I'll try and talk fast. Anyways, so we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Spaced Out palette. This is from the smaller of the 2 mystery boxes, the small summer mystery box. This is the palette. I think it's such a cute like 8-pan color story, especially for summer. I just thought it was adorable. The shade Shroom is like a really interesting, I want to say it's like a multi-chrome, maybe it's a duochrome, but it's a really interesting shade. It's kind of like a brown purpley pink shade and I really like it. I feel like there's green in there too. I don't know. Anyways, really like this palette. Next up, we have the Give Me Glow Bad Witch Club palette. And this says season fall, so give me glow. Where's like season spring, season winter, season summer? I'm ready. I thought this palette was so fun. But this is the inside of the palette. Absolutely gorgeous color story. Perfect for this spooky season. And what prevents this, there's like one thing that prevents this from being a Holy Grail favorite, and it's that there are 3 shimmer shades and they're all pretty dark. And so I, like I said, like to have variety, so I want a lighter shimmer. If there was a lighter, like more like opal-y shimmer in here, this would for sure be in a Holy Grail favorite. I think this palette's amazing. I absolutely love the mattes in here. It's one of my favorite palettes to continue to reach for because this palette's, I think, like 2, maybe 3 years old at this point. Love it. Next up, we have the Get Groovy palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. This is from the large summer mystery box, and this is what the inside of the palette looks like. Such a gorgeous rainbow color story. I know it's a rainbow palette, but it's like just a fun rainbow, and I have had an absolute blast playing with this. I think this palette is just fun and inspiring, and it made me play with different color combinations, and I just thought it was a good time. So I'm really happy with it, and they always kill the artwork on their palettes. They always just like collaborate with really cool artists. So anyways, I love that aesthetic. So next up, we have the Nomad Cosmetics Cloud Forest palette. I brought this palette to Hawaii as well. I just thought it was another perfect one for that. This palette is really pretty. I believe when I did my initial review of this palette, I was like, I just didn't get the color story. I was like, every single shimmer except this one is green. And then you have these like pops of neon. So like you can really only do green looks. But now I get it. You can only do green looks with pops of neon. No, but seriously, like I feel like I get the color story a little bit better now. We've like warmed up to each other. I definitely mix this palette with other palettes. It actually pairs very nicely with the Paradise Islands palette, so that I can get those shimmers. But I do think this is a really pretty, really fun color story, especially if you like neon. And I really like the Nomad formula. Next up, we have the Gourmand Girls Nightshade palette. We still haven't talked about any new palettes yet, so I guess some of these were new last month because I was like, this one feels new, but it was new for last month. But anyways, this is the Nightshade palette. Isn't this palette absolutely stunning? So pretty. This is why I was comfortable getting rid of Flora, is because the shade Flowering is that same similar like yellow greeny duochrome, and so I don't really need that exact shade twice, and I like this color story better, so that kind of helps explain why that East Butte palette's going. I did a smoky look with this palette, which I really liked, and then I pulled this palette back out for like a purpley look with that pop of yellow, and it was so fun, so pretty. I'm definitely enjoying playing with this. I got the Haunted palette, which inspired me to pull this one back out, and this is a really good formula, so I'm glad I tried Gourmand Girls this year. Next up, we have the Strawberry Moon palette from Ensley Rain. I think this is the first palette with a brand. Oh no, Gloss Gods I had a code for, so for Gloss Gods you already saw the code, but anyways, putting the code on the bottom of the screen. Affiliate codes, just so you know. Anyways, and if you don't know what affiliate codes mean, it means that I get a small percentage commission. Sometimes the brands like pay that out to me. Sometimes they just give it as like store credit. Depends on the brand. But anyways, this is Strawberry Moon. These shades, Rose Moon and Lunar Glow, are absolutely beautiful. They like carry this whole palette for me. They like are so shifty. I feel like you can kind of see it when I go like that, right? Maybe? No, I don't know. But my issue with this palette, what prevents it from being a holy grail, because the colorful mattes are perfect. They nailed this matte formula. The shimmers, stunning. Like this shade Radiant, absolutely beautiful. These two down here, so gorgeous. My issues with this palette are that these greeny teal shades and these blue purpley shades all start to look similar to the color of rain. Like they all kind of just start to look similar on the eye, and I feel like we could have had different shades up here to be like slightly less redundant. I wish for Ensley Rain, I wish they would do like more of a mix. Like they always go super shimmer heavy, which is fine. I like shimmers. I don't mind. It doesn't have to be 50-50, but if your shimmers are going to look so similar, like maybe go for more mattes to give more variety in the palette, because you still have like really strong performing shimmers here. Like we could have had like an orangey matte and a, I don't know, like a, what am I thinking? Like a darker, this is like a teal down here. So maybe you go for like a like true blue mattes. I'm not sure. I'm not like a, I'll make eyeshadow palettes, but I just feel like there's room for this to be just a little bit better, but the quality of this palette is so good. So I would still recommend it. If you like this color story, this is what I would say to somebody. If they were like, should I get this? I'd be like, do you like blue eyeshadow? Because you're going to have to like blue eyeshadow. There's like a lot of this is blue. But if you like blue eyeshadow and you're a fan of like multi-chromes, absolutely this palette is amazing. I also adore the packaging. I think it's really cute. Okay, next up we have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics All Done Up palette. Now this palette, if for those of you that have been around, you may remember that when I've ranked this palette before, and sorry if that mirror's flashing, when I've ranked this palette before, I've said that it's okay, but it's not my favorite. This palette has like slowly inched its way to being one of my favorite Blend Bunny palettes, because I just find myself reaching for this one continuously compared to some of their other palettes, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm entering my neutral era, but I just find myself continuing to grab this palette, or like when I need to pull in a shade, it's like this palette has exactly what I'm looking for. So I really like this. Of course, Blend Bunny has amazing mattes, and then the shimmer formula in this particular palette is really good. Next up, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Warms My Blood palette. This palette is so stunning. Look at that. I absolutely adore it. I do have the shade Centuries, which dried out. I never asked the brand for a new one because I wasn't really going to reach for that shade anyway. And I have so many eyeshadow palettes that I'm like, so there's one shade in a palette that I can't use. Like, it's not that big of a deal to me, but like truly, I would not, like that bronzy antique gold is not my favorite color, so I'm not going to reach for it anyway. But anyways, the rest of the shades all work great. I really like this palette. It's amazing. Like the shimmers in here are a 10 out of 10. The matte color story is not my favorite, mainly because I don't really love reds, and then you have like neutrals and then reds and then purples, and the two purples are similar and the two reds are kind of similar. So I feel like we could have had a little bit more variety in the mattes, but absolutely gorgeous shimmers for sure. Such a fun palette to play with and use, and I'm so happy that I have it. Next up is going to be our first new palette. So this is the first palette that we're talking about that was new to me for the month of August. I didn't have a ton of new palettes in August, which is a first because the last several months I've had a lot of new palettes, but I only had 4 new palettes, which I, pat myself on the back. Next month is going to be a lot again, but hopefully we can decrease it and we can stick to more of the like 4 or less range for next year. That's my goal. But anyways, we have the Haunted palette for Gourmand Girls. And I just want to say, I've only used this palette once. I've used this palette one time. Oh, and I should say that this one and the Nightshade palette are collaborations with Doodles by the Bunny. I'm so sorry I didn't mention that before. But anyways, this is the palette. This color story, okay. When they launched this palette, I looked at it and I was like, ooh, it's so similar to Nightshade. I don't need it. Like, I really don't need something that's that similar. And then I watched my friends, Alicia and Brittany, use the palette, and they did such pretty looks with it. And I was like, well, maybe I do need it. So then I was looking at it, and I just, could not pass up these 2 shades down here. I was like, I think I will, and I had only used Nightshade one time at that point when this one came out, and I was like, I think I'm going to like Haunted better than Nightshade, so I should just get this one. And then if I need to declutter Nightshade, then it is what it is. But had these 2 launched at the same time, I wouldn't have gotten Nightshade. I would have just gotten this one because this color story speaks to me more. So anyways, grabbed this palette. Obviously, it re-inspired me to play with Nightshade, and I do like that palette, but I do like this one better out of the two. But the reason I haven't put it in Holy Grail favorites yet is because I've only used it one time, and that feels like a real bold statement to make after using it one time. But I am comfortable putting it at the top of this category because I like it so much. It's just so pretty. I already talked about how the quality of Nightshade was good. This one's just as good. I really like this one. So, you know, if I continue to use it, you may see it pop up higher if I continue to have a good time with it, because it really is such a good palette. I love that color story. Okay, last category is the Holy Grail favorites category. So we have some new palettes in here. Yeah, we do. We have some new palettes in here, and some of you might be like side-eyeing that a little bit because obviously I just had these palettes for this month, so saying Holy Grail favorite might be a bit of a claim. But that's how I feel right now. They feel like Holy Grail favorites. I feel like I'm never going to declutter these, and they're going to stick around in my collection forever. First up is another new palette, and this is the Adept Cosmetics Cimmerian Sunset palette. I really like this palette, and you know, maybe I'm biased because it is a Star Trek palette, but I just freaking love this one. There was one shade, USS Defiant, like creased and faded on me quite a bit, but I haven't had that issue. I don't think I've had that issue with other shades, at least not that I can remember. But I really like this one. This shade Pack Lead I used the other day, oh, it's such a gorgeous orange. I paired it with the Cosmic Brushes look that I did. I like the matte color story, like especially these two like reds, at least on my skin tone. I know some people have talked about how the two light shades are too light for their skin tone, so I do think that that's unfortunate, but for my personal opinion, this does work for me. So these two shades create a beautiful matte color story in my crease. I like the green shades as well. I think they're really pretty. I just really like this. The shimmers are beautiful, and I am just so happy with this. I love the packaging. I love pretty much everything except for that one shade that creased a lot, but that's okay. I think I did mention this in whatever video I did that look with. It creased on me, but hear me out here. I had put like an oil type of like, I think it was like an oily, there's some sort of oily thing I had on my lid from the day prior that I wasn't confident was like totally off my lid. So that might have led to it, but I did see other people in the review say that there was a couple of shades that had that gel creamy texture that was too creamy for them and did crease and fade on them. So it's entirely possible that it could be what happened. But I do just want to acknowledge that I also had kind of a weird situation, so I wanted to play with that a bit more. Next up, we have the Best Mattes palette, which is a collab between Ellie Starr and Brittany Huffman with BellaBeauteBar. And here's the inside. I haven't moved my palette around because I'm forcing myself to use every shade, and then once I do that, I'll move my palette around how I want to. But anyways, this is the palette. It is giant for sure, but it is so gorgeous. They have such a good matte formula in here. I absolutely love it, and every time I play with this palette, it inspires me to be more and more creative. Next up is another new palette for the month. This is the Nomad Cosmetics Ghost Town USA palette. Let me see if I can, there we go. I think we're getting the flip. Has that lenticular packaging on the front, and then I don't want to like bend it back too far, so we'll just go like this. This is the palette. Okay, so this palette arrived right before I went to Hawaii. Like it literally arrived the day before we were leaving. Yeah, because I think we flew out in the morning. So yeah, it was the day before we were leaving. Anyways, so, or wait, maybe we left in the afternoon. It either came the day before or the day of us like leaving for our trip, and I packed it because I was like, I'm not going to be able to like wait to play with this, so I just put it in, and unexpectedly I reached for this palette more than I did the Cloud Forest and the Paradise Islands, because I just fell in love with like the neutral color story. Like I just kept reaching for the neutral mattes, the neutral shimmers. I just felt like it was like I turn into a neutral girly when I'm on vacation because I end up changing my outfits, so I'm like, I just gotta do a neutral look that matches all my outfits. But anyways, I had an absolute blast playing with this palette, and this is the palette that's actually on my eyes today, plus I have like a glitter on my lid as well, or two glitters really, but I love this palette, so I had to put it up here. Next up is the last of the new palettes for the month of September. So this is the Danessa Myricks Groundwork palette, the Groundwork Defining Neutrals palette. So here we go. This is the palette. It has the cream to powder formula and the powder formula next to it for each shade. And I did a kind of like a 5 looks video, but I only did the tutorial for one, but then kind of talked through the rest of my looks. But I love this palette. I have had so much fun playing with this and pairing it with like my special shimmers or my special loose pigments or flakes or whatever. It's just been perfect for that. I've used it for contouring on my face a couple of times. It's just been great. I've really enjoyed this one. I've used it for bronzer a few times too. Like it's nice to have. I really like it. Last palette is the Isamaya Beauty Industrial 2.0 palette. And this palette is an all shimmer palette, but it is so freaking pretty. I just cannot. It is seriously so gorgeous. This palette is the perfect like one and done, or just throw a bronzer in the crease and do one of these shades if you don't have time. Like it is so good for that. Like these shimmers are next level gorgeous. I know this is an expensive palette, but man, does it feel worth it. I really like this one. So that is it. Those were all the palettes I used in the month of September. Let's talk about the ones that I reached for the most, because I feel like it's nice to hear me say like, here's what I liked, here's, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I think seeing which ones that I continuously reach for is also helpful. So we used Ghost Town and Sumerian Sunset 3 times each. So these are tied for second place of the ones I use, of the palette I use the most. And then of course, Groundwork was the one I reached for the most. And I did reach for this 5 times in the month of September. And those were the looks that I showed in that video. But I have reached for it since, I should say I reached for it 5 times for like my eyeshadow. I didn't count when I reached for it for my face. So I've used it more than 5 times if we count the bronzer and the contour, but 5 times for eyeshadow. So anyways, those were the most used palettes that I had for the month. And yeah, that's it pretty much. So let me know in the comments if there's any of these palettes that you liked, disliked. I don't mind if we disagree. If you're like, oh my gosh, I love the palette that you hated, or I hate the palette that you loved. I just like talking makeup with all of you in the comments. Let me know what your favorite palette was that you've been reaching for lately. And with that, I will see you all next time. Bye.